welcome back to the main stage at Tech Demo Day. As ever, I am Dr. Gillian May, founder of the Social Intelligence Lab. So we're about to get started on this session just in a couple of seconds. So this session is going to be with DTAG, and I'm very pleased to be able to introduce you to Trevor, who is the co-founder and director of analytics at DTAG. So he will be joining me in the studio in just 2 seconds. So as I mentioned this morning, we have had a bit of a change in schedule. So after we've got a panel session, and then after that we were supposed to have a presentation from Wells Fargo. But unfortunately, we've run into a technical hiccup with them, and they're not able to access the Restream due to their internal policies, and they've not been able to get that lifted. So we can run another session, which can be a Q&A with me. So if you are interested in that and you have some things that you want to talk about, can you please use the event wall or just mention in the chat here. We don't want to put on a session for the sake of it, but if there's things that we can talk about, for instance, the listening study, then we're more than happy to do that. But I don't want to just do a session for no reason. So please do get in touch with us and let us know what you think. But we've now got Chubba. Hi, Chubba. How are you doing?
Hi, very well.
I don't have any sound for you, I think. Here we go.
Is that better?
Yeah, no, I am good, thank you. Yeah, all good now. So I am going to hand over to you for your presentation. And if there's any questions or comments that come in from the audience, I'll be able to get those at the end and field the questions for you. So you just concentrate on your presentation, have a good one, and I'll see you at the end.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Chubba Danchazi. I'm Director of Analytics with DTAG. We deliver fact and feeling-based drivers behind consumer decisions based on textual content of online media. In addition to social listening, we also provide hybrid analytics and competitive intelligence solutions in 31 languages. I'm not going to spend too much time on sort of beating my own drum, but I have been working on this, little topic of social intelligence for a couple of years now. Most recently, I had a long stint at Microsoft, which sort of was a springboard to inspire me to start my own company and try to build a better mousetrap. What I'll be talking to you today about is this simple notion that decisions are not necessarily as rational as the actors behind them would like themselves to believe and everyone else to believe. Most of the decisions, including purchasing decisions, are really made by the heuristics of the brain in the background based on the aggregate experiences, the feelings, the memories, the associations, sort of the rules that our minds make, and then we come up with rationalizations for why we made the decision that we just did, which is a large part of the reason why I really strongly believe that sentiment, emotion, and being able to measure and quantify that and do so accurately, even though it seems like it's a kind of a basic element of social media analytics and social intelligence, it truly is an indispensable part of what we do and what actually allows us to drive inferences and insights for our clients. So what has happened in the last few years? I've been evangelizing alongside Gillian and I think most of the people here for many years about the importance of the role of online communication, of the connections and the flow of information between people and brands and the sharing of ideas. It has ballooned and exploded to really a tremendous global scale. At this point, the estimates are around 50-60% of the human population is on a social media platform of some sort. I believe the number is about 93% of people that have access to the internet are on social media in one way or another. This presents a tremendous opportunity. It's it's a tremendous stream of content, of constant feedback, of engagement of people with themselves, with groups, with ideas, and with products and brands in the marketplace. The challenge is that it's almost become too overwhelming. How does one choose and decide on what's relevant? How do you integrate all of this information? How does this turn into a synthesis that actually makes practical sense? How does this actually help drive business decisions? And how can you know more about the space that the company operates in and the competitors that are out there? And so that brings us to this concept of hybrid analytics. I've always really sort of been driven to the holy grail of being able to integrate and sort of elevate the status of social intelligence as a source of data, as a source of understanding, alongside sort of all the other business inputs and sources of intelligence that companies use in order to make decisions, to decide on what products to develop, on how to communicate, on how to market, on how to drive technological and social advances. And now we're also personally, rather, my team is in a position to be able to leverage some other data sources. I do firmly believe that it's an extremely important part of understanding the world. Social intelligence offers a window that very few others can in the way that it does. But at the same time, it is best when paired with and part of a kind of a holistic picture, part of an ecosystem of information, one of your senses, rather than all of them at the same time. And it works best when the rest are able to complement it and to be integrated with it into a whole. So the specific topics that I wanted to touch on are essentially these. Sentiment, what it is and how to best measure it, and why I believe a particular method is actually crucial to doing it well, and how does this fit in with the rest of the world out there, with the other sources of information that are available. So the picture is a bit perhaps tacky, but the topic is actually not. So when you're measuring any kind of content, what are consumers and what are the members of the audience saying and sharing about the brand? Generally speaking, we talk about sentiment in terms of the overall emotional content of the context of the post. Where is my brand? Where is my product being mentioned? And does this reflect well or poorly on me or my particular product, or my competitor's product for that matter? So being able to track yourself is just as important. Being able to track your context, your surroundings, and your competitors is just as important as being able to measure yourself. So this specific example comes from the project we did a while back that focused on evaluating the ROI of sponsoring a national soccer tournament or football for all of you European colleagues out there. And we had essentially the organizer of the event, the National Football Federation, who had a number of sponsors. Some of them were sponsoring the entire league. Some were giving their names to essentially the champion team. The championship itself was branded, and so they wanted to find out, okay, what was the impact on the public image? On the left, you see what is generally the standard accepted method, which is the document containing the brands. What is the positive and negative sort of connotation of the context around these companies in terms of whether the posts or the documents or the articles and the comments were positive or negative? While it directionally shows the similar picture, meaning they were more positive than negative, I think that if I went to the social media director or the marketing or the communications director of a company and told them that they did in fact have about 15 to 20% negative in the commentary around this flagship event that they had spent so much time and effort and quite a bit of money on, they probably wouldn't necessarily be happy. And so on the right, what we're looking at is a sentiment calculated based on the context that is specifically related to, actually directly pointing to, and in reality about the specific companies, about the brands. And this does, in fact, provide a much different and well, in most cases, much better picture for those sponsors, because the overwhelming majority of the comments that actually talked about them, as opposed to the quality of the refereeing or the weather conditions or the other fans, were overwhelmingly positive. And specifically, the one we were most interested in, the Global Sports brand that gave its name to the jerseys and the equipment of the entire tournament, was especially highly rated and highly considered. The reason I mention all of this is because the specificity of looking at sentiment at the object level, of looking at exactly the context around the concepts or the brands or the companies, is critical. And I'll be able to show you an example of why. So moving on, sort of one of the other big challenges that I don't know, I've often fielded questions about, both in past career stages and in the work that I do now, is how do I see the future? How do I know what's going to happen? Next, and what can I do to actually do an analytics setup that allows me some degree of foresight, some way of predicting what's going to happen next week and next month. I don't often share this particular project. It is a bit old. It is talking about essentially the national economy, the U.S. economy, during and immediately after the uh, the, uh, the great economic crisis of 2007, 2008. Um, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but essentially, what we developed, or I was working on, is trying to measure or gauge a sense of trust and confidence in the financial system. The clients I was working for at the time wanted to know how they can restore people's faith in banks and investment companies and brokerages, because bank runs are really, really, really bad for everyone, but of course, especially so for the financial institutions involved. What you're looking at is essentially a measurement of online content, textual content coming from mainly discussion forums and blogs, in the lighter green, that essentially measures the amount of anxiety, fear, negative emotion about the economy. While this in itself may sound interesting, the reason I'm showing you this is because by the end of a month, let's say the 30th or the 31st of a month, it was able to generate a metric that essentially told us the amount of economic activity, the total amount of money being spent into the U.S. economy a month later. And the correlation, when I first calculated it, it was so incredibly high that I assumed that this must be a mistake. I must be tilting the scale and basically cheating myself somehow, maybe unconsciously. But no matter how many data scientists and statisticians I share this with and talk to, there was not necessarily a flaw or a fault. It's not a crystal ball, right? A lot of it comes from how fast social media is able to deliver information, and the fact that people talk about what they're going to do quite often. But it is quite remarkable as to how accurately this actually describes true, concrete economic activity. Now, this is nice at a national level, but perhaps not necessarily as useful for a particular brand or for a particular company or for um, somebody that is trying to plan the next communications event or campaign. I did have a bit of an animation here, so let's see if I can make that work. Not this time, not through this platform. So I'll just walk you through it. Essentially, the task was similar, right? Given that we believed that it was possible to address forecasting, to address looking into what might happen next. What we then tried to challenge in my sort of the next project is how do we take this to an actual brand level? How do we do this at the level of a particular product? What we're looking at is actually premium notebook sales. So the question was, is there a way that we can accurately essentially provide a forecast for the production, a forecast for the people in charge of the supply chain and the warehouses, and filling up the partners' stocks with products in anticipation of what demand might be, and ultimately drive accurate revenue forecasts for the company itself. So the dotted line is a kind of a special mix of the magic sauce of measurement of social sentiment at a quantitative level. So it's the aggregate sentiment towards a particular brand. The interesting twist here is that the only way we were able to ultimately come up with this is not just to measure the target, not just to measure the product that we were interested in, but also the competitive ecosystem. So it's by being able to have an accurate grasp of the actual numbers behind both ourselves and the primary sort of rivals in the space is how this number could be generated. What the animation was meant to show is the fact that these numbers actually come from almost 2 months prior. So the dotted line is actually shifted in time by 7 weeks to line up with the actual sales figures that we ultimately received from the retail units, and it became essentially possible to drive a band, a predictive sort of to from maximum minimum band going forward into the future, again based on the feedback and the textual content of the discussions that were happening around the space, around both the product itself as well as the competitors. Let's see. I'm just trying to be conscious of time here. So this was the original, and of course, the major jump that you see in the middle of the graph was not exactly a surprise. It is a seasonal effect that does happen in late July, August. We do see an uptick in the purchase of these products, but nevertheless, being able to be so precise about the actual quantity was something that was a bit of a surprise even to me. And then, which brings us to hybrid analytics. Looking at social is, it's a curse of the profession, right? I'm steeped in it. Anybody that handles it on a daily basis perhaps sometimes overplays the significance of it, and tends to forget sometimes that there are other sources of information out there. So one of our current projects is to bring together the various aspects of looking at a competitive space, looking at an industry topic. One of the areas where we're especially active is in the biosciences and pharmaceutical field, and looking at specific treatment areas. So in this particular case, we're looking at a dashboard that is focused on medical treatments and drugs derived from various cannabis-based products. But the other sort of the other two elements that we felt were extremely important is to also allow our customers, in this particular case, the clients of a competitive intelligence company, to be able to see not just sort of our data, meaning the social content and the discussions and the conversations and the online content around the field and the patients and the drugs, but also a kind of a richer and different angle. So specifically, what we set out to do was to be able to aggregate the patent submissions happening around the world in the topic or on the subject, in the treatment area that we're focusing on, and we've managed to more or less work this out. This allows for the companies and for our partners, our clients, to be able to track innovation, to be able to find out where are developments, where is R&D happening, what are the main fields, what are the main subjects are being submitted for patents, who are the companies that seem to be leading the space, and potentially who are the acquisition targets or collaboration partners. Obviously, in the patent space and in research, many of the participants are research institutions. They're going to be universities. And so being able to have a handle on and keep track of in real time the innovation that's happening, that's maybe not nearly as public or much more difficult to access from an online media or a social intelligence perspective, for the simple reason that the individual voices of these researchers are likely to be lost in the in the overall din of all the other participants. So this allows us to essentially provide more avenues of looking at the same topic and being able to have a complete picture of the subject that we're trying to cover. And I believe that for a change, I talked fast enough that I was able to fit into the slot. I did want to just have one final sentence. So if you need to reach me, obviously you can through Jillian and through the platform. This is my email. We are in fact hosting a boot camp for practitioners in the space. Mainly to orient beginners, but also to provide an overview of the topic of social intelligence. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you so much. So we have had a couple of questions in that we'll get to. So there's one of them from Jackie, and she's asking, what is the frequency of refresh of a dashboard like that? Combines multiple data sources. Is it daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly?
It's kind of arbitrary. The technology makes all of this available. You can do this on an hourly basis if necessary. But for the purposes that we displayed here, for example, for pharma at the industry level, the social data would be refreshed daily. The patent data is something that we generally do on a weekly or monthly basis.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on the data source, I guess, and how frequently that they're refreshed.
Yeah, the availability of the data is based on APIs, and so it's pretty much instantaneous. It's just that I'm not going to get any new data from a patent database if I ping it more frequently than they refresh on their side.
Yeah, I think it's just allowing people to make aware kind of what that looks like in the cadence, because I think particularly in social data we're so used to having everything almost instantly that it can take a while to be able to understand what's happening with those other data sources. Jackie's also asked another question, and she's asking, how do you draw the parameters of competitors in the ecosphere? Is this limited to a specific list of known competitor set or something else?
So as much as I would love to claim that this is a universal magic bullet that applies in all situations, it came through really a bunch of work and a bunch of trial and error. So the mechanism does in fact work. We did test it across not just one, but three different product groups. It works best when there is a oligopoly. So when there's two or three really major brands dominating the space, because of the way that the calculation is done, you need to know not just your own brand's position, but the relative position of two or three other constellations in the sky. So when there's 12 or 15 or 25 competitors, all vying for the 2.5 to 6% of the market share, it becomes so fragmented that just it's incredibly difficult, and it becomes less accurate to track. When you have a space where there's 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, that's where the sweet spot is, and that makes it possible for this to actually work. Essentially, you're trading calculation accuracy, correlation of your data to actual sales with each competitor that you add, and so the fewer there are, the easier this gets.
Yeah. And one final question from me, Csaba. In terms of, so competitive intelligence came out as one of the growth areas for social data within our state of social listening study. So in terms, and we know that you've done quite a lot of work within this area, which we can see from your presentation. In terms of how you work with clients on competitive intelligence, is this a pure SaaS play, or is it more consultancy based?
Everybody wants to get to the SaaS piece, right? Everybody would love to just hit a few keystrokes and have insight appear. In all honesty, a lot of this actually has been more consultative in the sense that it's an education process. Maybe it's the specific sort of client set that we've I guess gotten most of the questions from, but the area of the professionals that are most active in competitive intelligence are tremendously smart, right? They know everything there is to about their own industry and about the ecosystem that they're working in. But sort of the deeper aspects or the more complex parts of social intelligence are something that they're still in the process of figuring out in terms of how to build into their day-to-day flow and how to make that gestalt happen, how to put it alongside and reconcile the information with all the other business metrics, revenue numbers, and competitive intel pieces that they already have. And that is where the consultation comes in, is basically working with them and helping them essentially create this mesh and make it work as an organic whole. And it's still a work in progress, right? It's not necessarily something that'll ever be finished, but in answer to your question, I think that this is an area where there is still quite a bit of thinking required. It's not as easy to just plug and play, even though everybody starts off the project thinking it will be, but it ends up something where it's quite fruitful and has been very rewarding for us to be able to work with and learn from our clients as they sort of figure out how to plug it in. In a lot of cases, it's about simplification. It's about reduction and being able to say, okay, I understand now. You've got these 27 metrics. Great. Let's choose the appropriate ones that actually will be target suited for the purpose.
Yeah, so definitely, because if we can measure loads and loads of things, but it's getting the ones that actually make sense and that matter, that is it's the crux of the challenge, isn't it? But Csaba, thank you so much for joining us today. So you can connect with Csaba and the DTAG team in the Expo Hall. They'll be happy to answer any of your additional questions and also take you on a private tour of the DTAG platform. So thank you so much, Csaba. I will see everybody on the main stage again for our panel session where we're looking at the difference between findings and insights. So I'll see everyone later. Csaba, thank you so much for being with us today. It was really great to have you. Thank you.
Nice to see you. Bye.